Today's lesson is on writing algebraic expressions. We're going to start out with a couple vocabulary terms, the first of which is a variable. A variable is a symbol, usually a letter, but not necessarily always, but it's a symbol that is used to represent a number. A symbol used to represent a number. Again, that is called a variable. The most common variable we use is x. Sometimes we might use n or y or some other variable. But any symbol used to represent a number is called a variable. Today's lesson is on writing algebraic expressions. So we should probably define what an algebraic expression is as well. It's an expression, so like a number sentence, but it doesn't just have numbers in there. It's a mathematical expression containing one or more numbers, operations, and variables. So we can have numbers in there, 3, 7, -2. Operations, so like addition symbols, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponents, parentheses. And then variables, we just defined what a variable is. So an x or an n or something like that. So 5x squared plus 2y would be an example of an algebraic expression. So again, a variable is a symbol, most often a letter, used to represent a number, and an algebraic expression is an expression containing one or more numbers, operations, and variables. So we're going to be writing algebraic expressions. So we're going to be given a word sentence, and we're going to try to come up with probably not something quite that complicated, but we will be coming up with the algebraic expression that matches with the word phrase. So I want to start out by taking a look at some of the word phrases and how to tell if we're going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So each of the following phrases tells us that we should be using addition. The first one we are given is increased by. Increased by tells us to add, more than. If I'm given 5 more than 3, we want to add 3 and 5. Sum, the phrase sum means that we are adding things up. Obviously plus, that's a pretty obvious one. There's certainly more, but these are the most common ones you will see. Also, when you add, it's important to note that when we add things, 3 plus 2 gives me 5, and 2 plus 3 also gives me 5. So the order that I put them in, if I'm adding, doesn't matter. It can be written in either order. That is called the commutative property. So addition is commutative. I can write it in either order. Subtraction, some phrases that are given, decreased by, less than, difference, minus. And then subtraction is not commutative. 7 minus 4 and 4 minus 7 are not the same thing. So we need to make sure that we put them in the proper order. Order does matter here. Usually we'll put them in the order that it's given. So if it says like 5, that's a bad 5, but we'll go with it. 5 decreased by 3. So that means I'm starting with 5 and I need to decrease it by 3, so I'm going 5 minus 3. The one time that it's not, so that's, let's actually talk difference here. If it says the difference of 5 and 3, the difference of 5 and 3, we put them in the order they're given, 5 minus 3. The one time, or at least the most common time, the most common phrase that is used when I don't put them in the order that's given is less than. Less than is the one where we actually kind of switch the order around. If it says 7 less than 10, that means I want to start with 10, and I want to take 7 less than that. So this would be 10 minus 7, not 7 minus 10. So less than is the big one that's used, that we actually kind of switch the order around. The order does matter with subtraction. Common phrases we use with multiplication, I think pretty clearly times, that's one you should be familiar with. Times tells us to multiply. The product of two numbers means we are going to multiply them together. Sometimes it may tell you to double a number or triple a number or quadruple a number. That means to multiply it by 2 or 3 or 4. Twice a number would tell you to double it, multiply it times 2. Also the word of. The word of means to multiply. Most often you'll see the word of used if we have a fraction in there of some sort. If it says 2/3 of 15. 2/3 of 15 means to take 2/3 and multiply it times 15. Multiplication is commutative. 4 times 5 and 5 times 4 are the same thing. They're both equal to 20. So it doesn't matter. I don't need to worry too much about which order I put it in if I multiply. If it says the product of 2 and 3, I could do 2 times 3, or I could do 3 times 2. Either one is acceptable. So we did addition, subtraction, multiplication. We should probably do division as well. Quotient. The quotient of two numbers tells you to divide. Ratio. Each, per. Those are kind of the most common ones. Divided by. I don't think we need to write that one down. And division is another one where order matters. 4 divided by 2 is 2, but 2 divided by 4 reduces to 1/2, it's 0.5. So those are not the same thing. It does matter which order I put them in. Again, usually, like if it says the quotient of 4 and 2, we do 4 divided by 2. We put them in the order they're given. So a few example problems here. We'll start with the easier ones. We are asked to write an algebraic phrase for each of the following word phrases. So we are given word phrases. We need to write an algebraic expression. That probably should say write an algebraic expression for each of the following. Number 1 says the product of Q and 4. The product of Q and 4. So product, if you see the word product means that I need to multiply. So I need to multiply Q and 4. We said that multiplication, it doesn't matter which order we do it in. When you multiply, you don't want to use the X. So Q, X, 4. Remember, X we usually will use for a variable. So we don't really want to write it as QX4. We can use the dot to represent multiplication, Q times 4. We can use parentheses to represent multiplication. Usually when we have a variable and a number, we call that number a coefficient. Usually we will write the coefficient first. So we could write it as 4 times Q. And usually when it's multiplication, we actually don't even need to write anything in between the two. 4Q. That's the most common way that you would see it. Any of these would be acceptable. You could do 4 times Q with the parentheses as well. Any of those mean multiply Q and 4. This one right here is the one that is the most common way that you will see it. That's the one I would try to write it as. That's the one I should be familiar with. Number 2. Number 2 says a number x divided by 12. A number x, so I've got x, and I am dividing by 12. I think pretty clearly we need to use division. The most common way to see it written would be x over 12. It has to be in this order. Division is not commutative. I cannot switch the order around. This one, again, is the most common way that you will see it. X divided by 12 with the actual division sign in between. That would be an acceptable answer as well. 7 less than R. 7 less than R. That phrase less than, remember, means to subtract. Less than, that's the phrase that the order kind of switches around. 7 less than R. That means I'm starting with R, and I want to go 7 less than that. So I need to start with R and take away 7. This is the only appropriate answer when I am subtracting. Subtraction, the order matters. I don't have another symbol that I can use for subtraction like I do with multiplication or division. R minus 7 is correct. Number 4 says the sum of W and 55. Sum tells us that we're going to add things up. W and 55 is what I need to add up. W plus 55. That's a great answer. Addition, it doesn't matter which order we do it in, so 55 plus W would also be correct. Either of those answers work just fine. Question number 5. Number 5, we're still writing an algebraic expression for each of the following. Number 5 says the difference of C and 38. The difference of C and 38. Difference, that was back on our subtraction list. There it is right there. The difference of C and 38. So difference tells us we need to subtract. When I have a difference of two numbers, we put them in that order. It needs to be in the order that's given, C and 38. So the difference between C and 38 would be C minus 38. Number 6, a number y increased by 10. A number, it's an unknown number, so we're calling it a variable y, and we need to increase it by 10. Y plus 10, we'll make it go up by 10. 10 plus y would also be correct. Number 7, the quotient of 36 and x. The quotient of 36 and x. Quotient tells us to divide. Quotient of 36 and x would be 36 divided by x. And number 8. These last 3 are going to be a little bit more difficult. This says 12 less than. Less than means I'm going to subtract the product of, that means I'm going to multiply 9 and y. So let's start with this part right here. The product of 9 and y. So product means multiply. So I need to multiply 9 times y. The most common way to write multiplying 9 and y are to write it just as 9y with no symbol in between. If I have a number next to a variable, it's implied that I'm multiplying those things. So now I'm going to rewrite this sentence so that it's not a sentence, but rewrite this phrase so that I'm replacing the product of 9 and y with 9y. So it's going to say 12 less than 9y. The phrase less than, remember, switches the order around. So 12 less than 9y, I'm starting with 9y, and I need to go down by 12. 9y minus 12. Two more. Number 9. Number 9 says the sum of 8 and the quotient of 2 and x. The sum of 8 and the quotient of 2 and x. Again, let's start with this part here. The quotient of 2 and x. Quotient tells us to divide. We're just going in the order that's given. The quotient of 2 and x would be 2 over x. So now the phrase says the sum of 8 and 2 over x. Sum means I'm adding, so my answer is going to be 8 plus 2 over x. Addition is commutative, so I could switch the order around. 2 over x plus 8, also acceptable. Number 10 looks very, very similar. The quotient of 8 and the sum of 2 and x. So switched the order that it was given there. The quotient of 8 and the sum of 2 and x. Start with this part of the phrase right here. The sum of 2 and x. The sum of 2 and x would be 2 plus x. And I'm going to rewrite the phrase, the quotient of 8 and 2 plus x. Quotient tells us to divide. When we divide exactly in the order that's given. So the quotient of, I'm dividing 8 by 2 plus x. 8 divided by 2 plus x. That is it for today's notes.